Yo guys, Punkrat on another video. So this is actually a video that I've been planning for a pretty good while now, but I've been waiting for the right time to release it, or at least to work on it. So for the last month, I've tried to focus on blackwing lair as much as possible, but I think I've covered pretty much everything that I can. Now going forward, we're gonna have some more general scope videos to talk about, and even maybe delve into some legacy content in general, talking about vanilla all the way through Wrath of the Lich King. Now for this video, I really want to talk about a dungeon that I think is undervalued, underexplored, and in general just doesn't get the credit that I feel it deserves. We're talking about Sunken Temple. In my personal opinion, I think this is one of the most pivotal experiences that there is in Classic WoW, and if I think of back in the day, in original vanilla, this was one of the most epic experiences I had leveling up. And with the min-maxing meta that we've seen in Classic WoW, people kind of just ignore this one. So with this video, we're gonna put as much attention on that specific dungeon as possible. And there's actually a reason why I chose to release this video now, because there's some new content coming out related to the Sunken Temple. So here we go, the most underrated dungeon in Classic WoW, the Sunken Temple. Let's get into it. So the Sunken Temple is something that we've really seen people ignore in our current version of Classic WoW, but it's one of the dungeons that I think I have a huge connection to back in the day exploring, and there's many reasons why I think it's actually super pivotal in terms of the experience of a Classic WoW adventure. And the first thing that I want to talk about is just the aesthetic and the location. The first thing that comes to mind when it comes to Sunken Temple is just the location. The Swamp of Sorrows is a very special place. There's no place like it in Classic WoW. The mood is very gloomy, it's very swampy, a green haze hovers around the air. Unfortunately, it's kind of a zone that doesn't have a lot of quests, so for the most part, people tend to just ignore it. And Alliance does not have a flight point there. The only way that they can get to the Sunken Temple is either through Darkshire, walking back through the Deadwind Pass, or going to Netherguard Keep and then walking north. And Alliance also doesn't have an encampment there. We can't quest within the Swamp of Sorrows really effectively. Not to mention it's a level 30 to 33 zone, which doesn't really apply to doing a dungeon there at level 50 or 49, 48. For the most part, it's kind of random, and that's why a lot of people choose to ignore it. But the Sunken Temple is one of the coolest raid style dungeons, and really that's an important thing, raid style available in your leveling process. It's almost like a Mayan temple that's sunken beneath the water surface, at least for the most part, in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by Dragonkin elites. The location is super epic. Back in 2005, you might have not even known that it was there. Imagine a world of Azeroth where nothing was told to you. You might have never actually discovered this specific zone. It's kind of secluded from general walking paths. Not to mention, you'd have to make your way through the entire maze structure just to be able to locate the portal. It's a pyramid type structure in the middle of the ocean, and then you have to work your way through a maze style structure just to find the portal at a specific level through a specific path within that Mayan temple. And then once you actually zone into the instance itself, again, you're confronted with a completely unknown terrain, almost a random structure that you have to figure out from scratch once again. There's absolutely nothing linear about the Sunken Temple, and that's what makes it so epic. It's known as the Lost Temple, a temple located in the middle of Swamp of Sorrows, which was initially controlled by the Gurubashi Empire, a place where the trolls attempted to summon and control Hakar, the blood god himself. It has history connected towards the orcs, the green dragons, and eventually the green dragon himself, Aranicus, was sent there to contain Hakar's evil power and cleanse the temple. Eventually, the temple sunk to the bottom of the water, and over time, Aranicus himself went crazy. At least that's the story. Mentioned in the lore is that nobody was ever actually close enough to the temple in order to verify that specific story. But essentially it has a lore connected between the Gurubashi Empire, the orcs who found themselves in the Eastern Kingdoms, and of course the Gurubashi trolls. It has a deep lore connected to the history of World of Warcraft, which I'd say is definitely something that Blizzard never really decided to delve into too deeply. It has everything that you'd require to make an epic dungeon. In fact, you could say, and I have said, it's kind of raid-like. The dungeon itself is super epic, an absolutely massive place with mystery, puzzle solving, and a level of grandeur that makes it feel greater than just a dungeon. Once you've made your way through into the portal, you're confronted with 4 different entry points. You could decide to either tackle the bottom level of the dungeon itself or make your way to the top, and this really exemplifies the vastness of the dungeon itself, and it's a big reason why most people who hit up this dungeon while leveling up have absolutely no idea where they're going, and I'd say that's pretty much a good thing. Dungeons nowadays, or even past vanilla, tend to have a little bit of a linear design to them. It's hard to get lost rather than hard to understand where you're going. Sunken Temple is a real maze. When first zoning in, you actually don't have access to a lot of the later bosses. There's two parts to the raid, I guess the cellar, which is the bottom portion, and the upper portion, both which need you to clear around the entire ring. Either slay the mini bosses in order to gain access to the bottom, or complete the puzzle, clearing around to all of the snake statues, and then clicking them in the right order in order to unlock the boss within the pool of water down below. This specific puzzle is exactly what I'm talking about, or what I was trying to allude to earlier. You have many different platforms in a circular structure around a bottom water pit at the bottom, each holding its own snake statue. You have to clear the entire ring. Once you've done that, it's now time to click them in the right order, but there's no hint. You have to figure it out entirely from scratch. Imagine back in 2005 where you had no Wowhead at all. No online resources pretty much for this except for maybe the forum boards. Through trial and error, the player base had to just figure out what the order was and then communicate it throughout their server, throughout their guilds, and eventually it would spread and become common knowledge. This is what an MMORPG is all about, and it's greatly linked to what I was talking about makes the Sunken Temple so great. There's a great amount of mystery that surrounds this epic location. It's a dungeon with so many different levels, puzzles, mystery, tons of staircases, and corners and crevices and places to get lost into, and then epic bosses which feel like raid bosses. Massive green dragons that make you feel like a real raid group when you're taking them down, all culminating in the epic boss fight facing Iranicus himself, a Goliath of a boss which you probably haven't seen at least before hitting level 50. There's nothing like tanking a massive dragon available to you at this level range. It feels like something that you would experience probably at level 60, especially in the environment. What we've seen over the years is Blizzard oversimplify things, maybe reduce the scope of most dungeons and try to add more detail in a more enclosed environment. Sunken Temple is the complete polar opposite of that. It's a massive, spacious dungeon with super high walls, massive tunnels, massive bosses, and pretty much no direction once you zone in. You have to figure it out as you go along, where the dungeon feels like this massive, mysterious environment, and you're just a simple, noble warrior. Some bosses connected to the Gurubashi trolls, in troll mini bosses, a troll berserker, and of course the avatar of Hakar, which can only be summoned if you have the specific item. So we've got the avatar of Hakar, which adds even more history, more foreshadowing and depth to this dungeon. Foreshadowing, like I said, what's to come once Zul'Gurub releases many patches later. You might not have known it at the time, but the Sunken Temple, story-wise, is the precursor or connected to the release of Zul'Gurub, which is one of the most iconic classic WoW raids out there. And then the green dragonflight with tons of dragonkins in this iconic room, which was probably one of the most daunting areas to challenge or at least confront pre-60 from back in the day. Now, as I alluded in the intro, I thought it was the right time to talk about the Sunken Temple right now, and that's because a lot of us are actually going to be going back there. With the release of Phase 3, we're getting class-specific quests, which lead to some pretty interesting pre-raid rewards. Some better than others, but most of them pretty iconic to the time of classic WoW. Some notable items are the Grim Reaper's weapon, or at least that's what I like to call it, from the Warlock-specific quest, the healing beads for priests, the diamond flask for warriors, and tons of other options out there, especially like the Devilsaur Eye for hunters. You might have gone through your entire classic experience never touching this specific dungeon, especially if you're on the Alliance side. Well, now it's your time to maybe go back there, even if you're level 60, and experience one of the most underrated dungeons and underdone dungeons in classic WoW and maybe in World of Warcraft in its entirety. If you get this specifically from the random dungeon finder in retail WoW for the last couple of expansions, it's been completely dumbed down, and you don't get the entire scope of what it's about. But in classic WoW, the experience is pretty epic. From trekking out there, finding the portal, taking the challenges of the sewers, or at least the under portion of the dungeon, and then working your way towards clearing the top, clearing out all of the troll mini bosses, the dragon wings, potentially even getting the avatar of Hakar, and then finally finishing it off, the culmination of tackling Shade of Aranicus. There's just something so iconic about the Sunken Temple that, at least for me, is connected to my experience in classic WoW, and that's why when I was leveling up to 60 for the first time, it was definitely something that, even though it was off the beaten path, I absolutely had to go and do. And I recommend to any of you guys right now to finish your class quest and at least give it a shot, because it's one of the best dungeons ever, or at least that's my opinion. But that's pretty much the video. I wanted to talk about it, show you guys some visuals, explain why I think it's an underrated dungeon, and hopefully you guys see exactly where I'm coming from. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, of course, if you liked it, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill, soldiers. Hit the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a new video straight out of the render oven. And with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.